I want to talk about something today that I don't think gets discussed enough when we talk about healthy relationships, and that is communication. But not the tips and tricks kind, the real kind, the kind that lives in your body before a word ever comes out of your mouth. Because for a lot of us, and I am 100% absolutely including myself in this, communication wasn't something we learned was safe. It was something we learned to manage, to rehearse, to word carefully, to soften so much that by the time it came out, it barely resembled what we really wanted to say. So I want to tell you how that started for me because maybe you can relate. I also am going to share what it cost me and what it finally looks like when it's right. I grew up in a house that was pretty calm for the most part. My parents didn't fight in front of my brother and me. There wasn't a lot of yelling, except at my brother, who was always in trouble, the in the principal's office all the time kind of trouble, most likely because his IQ was off the charts, was bored in class and did something to land him there. And I watched all that and I made a decision the way kids do without even knowing that they're making it. I was going to be the good girl. I was going to be the one who followed the rules, not make waves, not give anyone a reason to raise their voice at me. And for a long time, it worked. I stayed out of trouble and I did what I was supposed to do. But here's what that little girl didn't know she was also learning that keeping the peace was her job, that keeping the peace mattered more than how she actually felt, that the way to be safe was to make herself small. I carried that into every relationship I ever had, not realizing it for a long time. Eventually, I grew up and I stopped following the plan that my parents had for me. I dropped out of college after a year and a half. I was a music major. I ended up in the restaurant business. I married someone to someone's outside of my religion, both who I met at work. I was figuring it out and finding my own way. But that internal pattern, the one that said, don't make waves, don't upset anyone, stay small, that one took a lot longer to unlearn. And honestly, it still pops up once in a rare while. I have walked on eggshells in more relationships than I want to count. Not all the time, but definitely when there was a lot of emotion going on and when my ex was drinking. And I want to describe what that actually feels like because I think we use the phrase walking on eggshells a lot without making it real. For me, it was a tightening in my stomach, heaviness that would settle in when I knew a conversation needed to happen and I didn't know how it was going to land. I would rehearse what I was going to say. I would wait, sometimes for days, until he seemed to be in a good mood before I brought it up. And when I was really avoiding something or feeling pretty much any emotion but happiness, I ate. Food has always been my go to drug of choice. I've puffed once, which my children think is hilarious, and I've never been a big drinker, even when I was younger. For me, it's just never been worth the calories. If I was eating when I wasn't hungry, I was actually probably avoiding a conversation I needed to have. The worst of it was when there was anger. As a matter of fact, I didn't even know until I was about 25 years old and in therapy that feeling angry was an acceptable emotion to have, let alone being able to express it in a healthy way. So when my ex husband or a boyfriend raised their voice, especially when drinking was involved, something in me just shut down completely. I could feel my whole body deflate. The good girl came back and said, don't make it worse. Don't say the wrong thing. Just get through it. And here's what I want to know now that I didn't know back then. That tightening in your stomach is your nervous system telling you something important to pay attention to. And when you are chronically bracing for someone else's reaction before you speak, that is not a communication problem. That is a safety problem. When I met Hugh, my husband, he was warm and open in ways that I had never experienced before. But early on, he still had some anger issues that he was working through. And one day he raised his voice at me. And I said something I had never said to anybody in my entire life. I remember it like it was yesterday. I told him, that's not going to work for me. If that's what it's going to look like when we disagree, this isn't going to work. I don't know if you can feel how big that was for me, but it was huge. I was in my 50s. I had been married twice before. I had spent decades swallowing things and rehearsing things and waiting for the right moment and eating my feelings and making myself smaller just so someone else could stay comfortable. And this happened with friends occasionally and at work too. But this time, I finally just said the thing. After years of therapy and personal development work, I stood in the face of anger and I didn't shut down. And Hugh heard me. He didn't get defensive. He didn't make me feel dramatic or wrong. He said he would do better. And he did. That was the first time I really understood what it felt like to be honest and have it go well. My body didn't tighten. There was no heaviness. There was just relief and something that felt a lot like self respect. I want to be real with you about something because I think it's important, especially because once in a while I get people on social media telling me that I'm too positive because I'm big into motivational quotes and all that kind of stuff. Hugh and I have a wonderful relationship. Not perfect because there's no such thing, but he is safe. He is open. He listens. And I still, even now, catch an old pattern sneaking back in when life gets hard. And to be honest, he's been a saint this last year because this past year has been a lot. We moved to Florida almost 7 months ago to be closer to my parents since they're getting older. I haven't lived this close to them in 22 years, and it's been great. I've probably seen them more in the last 6 months than I have, and I can't tell you how long, which I'm super grateful for. They're relatively healthy, and I know how unusual it is for somebody my age to still have both parents around, and they're still married to each other. Leaving my kids, though, my friends, and my job back in Chicago has not been easy. Job hunting at 60, which I honestly didn't expect to be as hard as it has been, to say the least, has been humbling. I've been watching my parents transition into independent living over the last month, and there's been a lot of shit going on with my oldest. So life, it's been a little heavy. And on the very occasional times that Hugh and I have a disagreement, I have felt myself go quiet, shut down. Not because he isn't safe, because he is, but because when you're already carrying a lot of stuff, conflict feels like one more thing you don't have the bandwidth for. A few weeks ago, we were leaving a restaurant and someone was smoking outside. Hugh, who quit smoking many, many years ago and is super sensitive to to the smoke now, said something loud enough that the person probably heard it. And it hit me the wrong way. It sounded judgmental, and judgmental people just trigger me, which is totally on me and not on him. But I went quiet. And because he knows me so well, he knew something was wrong. But when we got in the car, he asked me if I was okay. And I said, yeah, I'm fine. Now, I learned a long time ago what fine actually stands for: fucked up, insecure, neurotic, and evasive. That's what fine means. And I knew it when I said it. But eventually I spoke up. I told him what had bothered me and why. And he heard me, really heard me. And he explained his side. And his side made total sense to me. And you know what happened in my body when I understood where he was coming from? It relaxed. The tightness went away. I felt more open, more loving, more connected to him than I had been 5 minutes before the conversation. That is what safe communication does. It doesn't just solve the problem, it brings you closer. So, how do you know early on when a man is safe to communicate with? Here are some things that I want you to watch for. Does he stay regulated when things get uncomfortable? Or does he shut down? get defensive, or raise his voice. You don't need to conflict to test this. Just watch how he handles small frustrations, his reactions while he's driving, how he talks about people who have disappointed him, whether he can sit with something hard without needing to fix it or win it. Does he ask you questions? Real ones, not just how was your day, but does he follow up? Does he remember what you told him a week ago? Curiosity is a form of respect. When you express something that bothers you, does he hear you or does he immediately defend himself? There is a big difference between explaining and deflecting. A man who can hear your hurt without making it all about him is showing you something important. And here's the one I want you to sit with, because this one is about you, not him. Are you communicating clearly, or are you hoping he reads your mind? And a lot of women I speak with say they do this. And I have too. I've gone quiet and said I'm fine and waited to see if he would notice. I've dropped hints instead of saying the thing that I wanted to say. I have been upset about something and I expected him to just know, which isn't cool because that is not communication. That's a test. And it's not fair, not to him and not to you. Part of doing work on yourself is learning to say the thing that's bothering you clearly, without the rehearsal, without waiting for the perfect mood, without softening it so much that it loses its meaning. You deserve to be heard, but you also have to be willing to speak. And for some of you, myself included, it's not easy, but it is something I work on with my clients. And I want to come back to the body for a moment, because I think this is where the real answer lives. And it's something I learned to pay attention to after my divorce. And I wish I had been more conscious of it way earlier. Walking on eggshells is not just an expression. It is a physical experience. That tightening, the heaviness, the holding your breath before you speak, the relief when he's in a good mood, because relief means you were bracing for the alternative. Your nervous system keeps score even when your brain is busy making excuses for someone. And the opposite is also true. When communication is safe, when you speak and you are heard and the conversation brings you closer instead of further apart, your body knows that. It relaxes, it opens, and it exhales. So pay attention to which one you're feeling, not just what he's saying, but what your body is doing while he's saying it. We're in the second week of talking about green flags in relationships, and we're talking about communication, because of emotional availability without the ability to communicate safely is just potential. It has to show up in the actual conversations. So I'm going to leave you with this. You should never, ever have to brace yourself to be honest with the person that you love. Never. Not softening the thing so much that it disappears, not waiting for 3 days for the right moment, not rehearsing it in the mirror, not eating your way or drinking, smoking, or anything else through the anxiety of a conversation that you need to have. You deserve a relationship where honesty feels like relief, not risk. I know that's possible because I have it. And I found it in my 50s after everything I'd already been through. I am not just your coach. I'm your proof. You are worth being heard, and you are worth waiting for someone who makes it safe to speak. So if this video helped you, please subscribe. Every week on this channel, we talk about real love, real growth, and what it actually takes to create the relationship you deserve, because your best relationship starts with you. See you next time.